to find out about the history of this school. The library, Emily concluded. They left the room together, closing the door behind them. They didn't lock it. They knew that, locked or not, this room had opened something inside them, something. They weren't sure they could ever close again. The Millfield High School library on a Saturday was a completely different world. Gone were the whispers of students and the rustling of turning pages. The place was enveloped in an almost sacred silence. Daylight struggled to penetrate the tall, dusty windows, creating shafts of light that hung in the air, revealing millions of dancing dust particles. The scent of old paper and polished wood lingered, a smell that usually brought comfort but was today tinged with tension. They were the only two figures in this vast space. The librarian, an elderly woman with thick glasses, merely glanced up at them before returning to her book, completely uninterested. Alex, with the instinct of a top student, immediately headed for the archive section. "We should start with the school yearbooks and old local newspapers," he said. But his voice had an unusual urgency and restlessness. The school was founded in the 1950s, so we have a lot of material to go through. Maybe there's an article, a small news clipping, anything. You check the yearbooks, I'll check the newspaper. Microfilms. We need to look for anything related to experiments, psychology, or the names of former principals. Do you remember their names? He spoke in a rush, without pausing for breath. Emily just nodded. She didn't need to remember. As she walked to the shelf holding the thick, leather-bound yearbooks, a strange sense of familiarity guided her. Her hand slid across the old spines, skipping over the 80s and 90s. She felt an invisible pull towards a specific time period. Her hand stopped on a yearbook from 1978. Meanwhile, Alex was fumbling with a microfilm reader. He muttered to himself, "Damn it, how does this thing work? I'm sure I've used it before. Why have I forgotten now? I need to take the film out. No, I have to load it first. Or do I have to turn on the light first?" Frustration was evident in his voice. Emily ignored Alex's confusion. She placed the heavy yearbook on a large oak table and began to flip through the paged black and white faces from the past, stared back at her outdated hairstyles, strange clothes. But she wasn't looking for face. She was looking for a name, a clue. "Find anything yet?" Alex asked, having given up on the microfilm machine and now pacing behind her. "I can't concentrate. My mind is all jumbled up. Do you think the current principal knows about this? Or is he just an oblivious successor? If it was an experiment, why did they leave it there? It's so irresponsible." Emily interrupted gently, her eyes still glued to the page. "Let me focus." Her words silenced Alex. He looked at her, a hint of hurt flickering across his face. Emily had never spoken to him like that. And then she saw it. In the section listing the school clubs, tucked between the chess club and the glee club was an inconspicuous name, the Cognitive Research Club. There was no group photo, just a short description. Under the guidance of Principal Alistair Finch, members explore the limits of the human mind and the potential for shared empathy. Alistair Finch. The name rang in Emily's head like a bell. She knew that name. "Alex," she called, her voice low. "Look at this." Alex bent down, squinting at the small print. Cognitive research? Shared empathy? It sounds harmless, but it could be a euphemism for something else. Emily finished his sentence. She quickly flipped to the administration photo section, and there, staring back at them, was Principal Alistair Finch, a man with a stern face, bright eyes, and an almost imperceptible smile. Something in his gaze made Emily feel uneasy. "Now we have a name and a specific year," Alex said. the excitement of a researcher resurfacing in him, overwhelming his anxiety. "I'll try searching the microfilm again." Finch, 1978. He hurried back to the machine, this time with a clear target. Alex succeeded after some fumbling. He managed to project a page of the local newspaper onto the screen. Fast-forwarded through articles about school football games and science fairs, and then he stopped. It was a small article, tucked away in a corner of the page, with the headline, "Finch's School Club Suspended After Incident." The article was vague on details. It only said that the club had been disbanded after several students reported emotional confusion and temporary memory loss. There was no further explanation. No investigation was mentioned. The story seemed to have been deliberately buried. Memory loss, Alex whispered, his face flushing, emotional confusion. "Emily, this is it." They were trying to exchange emotions or memories, and something went wrong. Emily watched in silence, her eyes fixed on the dim screen, but seemingly lifeless. Her mind was processing the information, not with logic, but with a kind of frightening intuition. "They used the mirror," she muttered. Alex turned to look at her. "What? How do you know?" "The article doesn't say anything about a mirror." "I just know," she replied, her eyes still vacant, and the spiral symbol too. "It's like a key to activate the process." Looking at the mirror and focusing on the symbol opens the door. The entire library seemed to grow colder. Emily's words, though, spoken calmly, carried the terrifying weight of truth. They had found the answer, or at least a part of it. Principal Finch's psychological experiment had failed, leaving behind a toxic legacy locked away in that room. Silence enveloped them, heavy, with unspoken thoughts, and internal fear was rising in both of them. They were not just observers of an old mystery. They had become a part of it. The experiment had been reactivated, and they were the new subjects. "We have to do something," Alex said, breaking the silence. "We can't let this continue. If it can be activated, maybe it can be reversed." The thought hung in the air. Reversing the reversal, a dangerous and reckless idea. They didn't go home right away. Instead, they wandered through the quiet streets of the town, the cold afternoon air seeming unable to touch the turmoil in their minds. The idea of an experiment lingered between them, both terrifying and strangely alluring. "Maybe it's the only way," Alex finally spoke. Breaking the long silence, he stopped under an old oak tree, its bare branches reaching up to the gray sky. "If we can understand how it works, maybe we can figure out how to reverse it. A controlled experiment, a short one, just to see what happens." His voice was full of hesitation, as if he were trying to convince himself. Emily turned to look at him. Her face was unsettlingly calm. Her initial panic seemed to have vanished, replaced by a cold focus. "My place," she said. "The living room has a large mirror. My parents are going out for dinner tonight." The decision was made without another word. There was a sense of inevitability to it, as if they were being carried by an unseen current, and the only choice was to follow it that evening. Emily's living room was dark, with only a small table lamp turned on, casting long, eerie shadows. The large mirror above the unused fireplace reflected the room in a distorted way, making it look both familiar and strange. Emily had redrawn the inverted spiral symbol on a white piece of paper. Her lines were surprisingly precise and firm. She taped the paper to the wall, right next to the mirror. "All right," Alex said, his voice trembling. 5 minutes only. We just look at the mirror and focus on the symbol. If anything strange happens, we stop immediately." "Agreed?" Emily just nodded, her eyes already fixed on her own reflection. They stood side by side in front of the mirror. Silence filled the room, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Emily and Alex stared at their reflections, two scared teenagers. Their faces pale in the dim light, they focused on the spiral symbol. Its counterclockwise curve seemed to draw their gaze, pulling them deeper. The room seemed to grow colder. The air thickened. Emily noticed the first change in Alex's reflection. The tension in his face seemed to relax, replaced by a vague confusion. His eyes lost their usual sharpness then. She felt the change in herself. A heavy feeling settled on her shoulders, the familiar restless anxiety seeming to dissolve, giving way to an emptiness, an inner silence. Alex started, then stopped. He blinked, looking around the room as if seeing it for the first time. What are we doing here? I forgot. He laughed nervously, a smile Emily was all too familiar with on her own face. My mind is a complete blank. This is so weird. Are you cold? Emily, I feel a little cold. He began to talk non-stop, jumping from one topic to another disjointedly, about homework, about the weather, about how he forgot to feed the dog. It was Emily's anxiety, her restlessness now coming from Alex's mouth. Meanwhile, Emily was completely silent. She stood straight, her hands clenched at her sides. She felt a frightening clarity. She could see every detail in the room, hear every tick of the clock, feel the fear rising in Alex as if it were a mathematical equation. She felt nothing. No fear, no anxiety, just cold observation. Alex, she said, and her own voice startled her. It was low, steady, and authoritative, just like Alex's voice when he was explaining a complex problem. Look in the mirror. Alex, who had been rambling, fell silent and looked in the mirror. He saw a girl with Emily's face, but with his own sharp, analytical eyes, and next to her, he saw a boy with his face, but with wide, anxious eyes and a forced smile. The truth hit him like a bucket of cold water. Oh my God, he whispered, his face white. It's happening. It's really happening.